Hey, everybody. I'm Jesse,
I'm Maeve.
I'm Jim.
and this is Boring Conversation.
Welcome to Boring Conversation, a Malifaux podcast.
Welcome back to Boring Conversation, everybody. Thank you all so very much for your patience. I screwed up already. See, look at this is ridiculous. Welcome back to Boring Conversation, everybody. Thank you so very much for your patience, for your support, and for tolerating the fact that I disappeared for like 3 months. Sorry, y'all. How's it going? Captain Con was cool. We could talk about that, but that was a long time ago. And now we're talking about 4th edition, which I guess apparently a new edition of the game is what it takes to get me to come out of hibernation. And thanks to Maeve and Jim for being here with us today. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
It is a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, and we got some kind of exciting news. Actually, one of the things that Maeve and I were talking about probably like a good month and a half ago at this point was the fact that we kind of needed another voice on the podcast, and we reached out to Jim, and he agreed to be an on again, off again guest host with us. So thanks very much for jumping on board, Jim.
Thanks for having me. This is part of my master plan to be a on again, off again host of every podcast in Malifaux.
Yes, every dang one.
I had that lofty goal for a while and was actually holding it for quite a while, a couple of years back, but I will gladly give it over to you now.
Yeah. So probably the most pressing news is that we have a new edition of Malifaux, which at this point you've probably heard about from like every other podcast or YouTube channel under the sun. Rather than kind of going over the same stuff that everybody else has been going over, we've had the rare opportunity to be able to record right after Weird released their beta version of the comprehensive rules. And we're certainly not going to read through the whole book top to bottom. But I think we've got some kind of unique perspective on some of these things. And I know that a lot of the things that I see in the new rule book kind of speak directly to some of the concerns that I've had over the last, I don't know, probably year to a year and a half of 3rd edition. But before we get into the meat of the episode, I'd like to ask you guys if you've got anything that you'd like to plug. What else are you doing in your creative or gaming lives?
Oh boy, do I. So, as always, if anybody who knows me knows I never ever stop. I have a book of poetry that just came out. If you would like to find it, I will give notes to Jesse to put in the show link. But yeah, it's a full collection of poetry that I wrote. You should read it because if you don't, you're transphobic. And that's all I got to say about that. You can also find me in multiple role-playing projects on Project Derailed, Endless Night Gaming, Third Floor Wars, and my own channel, Foxdale Games. I'll once again give Jesse those links to put in the notes so you don't have to remember them.
Awesome. Fantastic. And congratulations on your book, Maeve. I know that was a real passion project of yours for a long time.
So good.
Yeah, I get to live vicariously through you every time you let me know that you were going to like an open mic night or that you'd gotten in touch with somebody who was interested in publishing, and it was pretty darn cool.
And listen, people, if you would like to have a personal visit from me, find a place that I can read in your town, and I could possibly make it there unless you live across the pond, in which case, yeah, but just saying.
Even you have limits. We understand. It's okay. Yeah. Jim, how about you?
I just wanted to shout out The Other Coast as another pod that is out there and has different takes on Malifaux than a lot of the other content out there. So give Jeff and Colgan some love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have to say about the new edition. I know that they're often, pretty vocal about their own concerns and complaints and stuff with the system. So getting that kind of perspective from the West Coast and the type of meta that they're in is going to be really interesting.
Mhm.
As for myself, hey, it's Easter. Happy Easter, everybody. You've officially got like 1 day left to buy stuff during Weird's annual Easter sale. And feel free to use the Boring Conversation affiliate link that you're going to find in the show notes and on the Discord channel. I know for me, I didn't really have like a ton of stuff to buy. I think I was actually the most excited about the fact that Smile was back in stock, so I could buy that. I have this collection of board games that I haven't played. I think like probably everybody else that I know in the gaming world. But I was really looking forward to picking that one up. And when it sold out so quickly at release, I was a little disappointed. So got to snag that. And then I picked up, let me think here, the new Jockeys box, which I'm extremely excited about. Heck yeah. And then managed to snag a couple of alt models as well. I actually paid for one because I didn't want to wait for the next sale, and I didn't have another $100 to spend. So I paid for my Invisible Man Jin Bakara, and I got my free Maid of the Mist.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool. And then before we get on to the rest of the episode, as always, if you're into video game music and very unprofessional reviews of them, feel free to check out my other podcast, Chip Grooves Radio, which is also probably part of the reason I haven't been recording as much Malifaux content. My friend Mike and I do video game soundtrack reviews. We actually just posted Final Fantasy 16 a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to be interviewing a couple of composers who shall remain nameless, but pretty exciting stuff that's going to be coming up in the next few weeks.
You've already done the best video game of all time. Why need to go further?
We've done a lot of best video games of all time, but
You
which
did
specific
Chrono
one?
Trigger.
We did.
Right.
I badgered them into, before I was an actual guest or an actual host. I guested on a couple of episodes, and I told them that if they do Chrono Trigger, they had to invite me back, and they did. And then one thing led to another, and now I'm co-host. So there you go.
And if you have alternate opinions on that, you can come on the Discord and we can fight about it. It's fine.
Yes.
But you'll still be wrong, even if I lose.
I'm particularly proud of a few of the episodes that we put out recently, including Hades, which was a ton of fun to record.
Oh, such a good game.
And I think we hit our groove in that episode. It was great. And then we did Final Fantasy Tactics not very long ago either, which was a ton of fun. Absolutely,
another one of my favorites.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about other games we play on tabletops.
Yes. I myself am drinking a Lizzie's 81 IPA from Buzzards Bay Brewing. Lizzie meaning Lizzie Borden, and 81 meaning the 81 wax that she gave her parents with an axe. So it's good beer.
I've had a little bit of a migraine this week, so I'm chugging down some caffeine.
That'll do it. What is your caffeine vehicle of choice today?
It is a cherry Pepsi.
Cherry Pepsi's good. I like that. Jim, yourself?
I got some high quality H2O right here.
I should have some high quality H2O. I spent all day outside doing yard work.
Yeah.
It was nice today. First really nice day of the season here.
I was like 85 here today.
Yeah, it was not 85 here. It was like 66. It was beautiful. So I think we all know what we're here to talk about, and that's M4E. Really kind of what we have in mind is just sort of a somewhat loose roundtable discussion. I kind of want us to focus just on like key changes to the comprehensive rulebook. Not really going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, but I really want to kind of spend some time talking about how we feel like the design changes that are supposedly going to speed up gameplay and streamline things are going to help hopefully improve the experience for new players and also make tournaments a little bit more manageable. I know that both of those things have been struggles as the additions have gone on.
We're here for vibes, baby.
We're here for vibes. And we actually kind of reached out for the first time and solicited listener questions and feedback. And even though I just did it yesterday, I got to tell you, all the listeners really came through because we got quite a bit of feedback to get through. So for the folks that sent one question or two questions, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. For some of the folks that sent like 18 questions, we'll do our best. I appreciate the time that it took you to type them up. Yep. But some of the answers might be a little shorter because there's a lot there. And then, of course, I'm really interested in kind of talking about what our feedback is on changes to the edition that I know some people are a little more nervous about. I know there's some folks that are concerned about, maybe the depth of the game getting impacted, maybe not being as competitive as it used to be, and that's going to bear out when we get to the listener questions. But let's just kind of talk about the broad strokes. If you two wouldn't mind, why don't you take it away? Tell me about some of the big changes that we've seen.
Yeah. So like the big thing, the thing that is like probably um, catches their attention first is capped at 4 turns.
Yeah.
That's big. You score on the first turn. You all of your schemes and all of your strategies can be scored on the first turn, and you only played 4 turns, so the game starts off feeling like it's at breakneck speed right from the get-go. There's no hemming and hawing early turns. You don't have your turn to set up. You got to go.
Yeah, I think SPS said it best when it's not that we're cutting off turn 5, we're getting rid of turn 1 of 3rd edition.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And good riddance, right? Good riddance.
Yeah, I totally agree because, in 3rd edition, you either had a crew that didn't really do much turn 1, or you had a crew that dirtled like crazy and did a bunch of setup stuff, or you had a crew that alpha strikes with the intention of trying to break up the dirtly crews. It just wasn't really that interesting. And like turn 1 takes such a long time.
We're all guilty of playing Brewmaster here.
Yeah.
So I think we can all speak with confidence that having a dirtle crew in turn 1 Malifaux, it was a fun way to play for one player.
Yeah. I need the shame bell. So we can just shame ourselves.
Yeah, we should shame ourselves for that.
Another big thing is we've reduced a ton of flips out of the game.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody on Facebook put it the best when they said, hold on, I have it saved right here. Somebody was talking about damage flips, and they said, okay, so that's a difference of 5, so it's an egg flip, but I use focus, so it's a straight flip, but you're hard to wound, so it's an egg flip, but I got the puncture trigger, so it's a straight flip. Okay, I'll stone you to an egg. Like, all that's gone. All that is gone. And that's going to make the game so much faster.
Yes. Yeah. And practically speaking, at the end of 3rd edition, damage tracks were reliable. And what I mean by that is there was enough sources of positive 2 damage available for the main damage dealers, either through focus or through other effects.
Or card draw.
Or card draw, that you could just say, Seamus does 8 damage to you. He does 8 damage to a model a turn. Or pick your beater of choice. So what we've done is we've taken away the uncertainty that was kind of being removed from the game already and just simplified it. Now we don't have to do the mental math. And with the way that raises work, there's now a different kind of mental game you have to play where you have to figure out, is cheating a card when I'm already hitting worth it because of the raise bonuses?
Yeah, and conversely, it adds an additional level of card pressure for some of those, even like the 1s to 5s. I mean, I know a lot of people have been talking about how impactful those are because of empowering, which we're going to get to in a minute. But sometimes, like, if your opponent hits you with like a kind of a moderate total flip, sometimes just cheating in a 5 is enough to get rid of a raise, which is going to reduce the damage that your model suffers by 1 or even 2 in some cases. There might be models that maybe get additional bonuses from raises. Since focus doesn't work the way focus did anymore, it's sort of a different way for you to increase the damage, but in a more predictable way. And I think we've kind of seen Weird moving in the direction of reducing flips for a little while. I know that with some of the erratas that we saw in 3rd edition, for example, like Guild Mages, it used to be when you discarded a card, there was a healing flip. Well, they changed it so that it was just a flat 2 heal. We also started seeing more abilities towards the end of the edition that just did a flat 2 damage or even 3 damage instead of a variable flip.
Right, because let's be honest, like you said, we've all played Brewmaster. And how many times did you activate their healing bonus action, flip a card for that, and then flip a card for that. And the next thing you know, you've flipped 2 Severes off your deck for nothing, really. So doing that gives you much more chance to be able to get the big cards that you want in the times that you want them. And we're just not wasting time on decisions that aren't necessary. Yes, that does take a decision point out of the game, but it's a decision point that I think most people spent way too much time hemming and hawing over. So I'm
and
good. Go ahead.
I think kind of building on that, you know, some of the really spiky damage tracks that we saw in the game, and some of them were all the way from release, but I mean, a lot of them persisted right through the end of the edition, were stuff like, you know, a 2-4-6 track or a 2-3-6 track, or, you know, even Hannah tapping out at, I think, 7 damage. You know, when the variable flip mechanic is in the game, it really feels bad as the opponent when you're getting consistently just outlucked and hit for moderate on negative flips, or even severe on negative or double negative flips. And like, on the one hand, you're like, well, yeah, but that introduces some variety. It introduces some spice, some, you know, danger to the interactions between models. But like, there have been plenty of times that it just feels bad. I mean, as an example, at Captain Con, I was playing as the ringer. I ended up playing into Landon, who was running Lady J. And on Ivan's activation, 2 turns in a row, he flipped red Joker damage on negative flips. 2 turns in a row. And like, that kind of luck skews the whole game in a way that can sometimes be just, you can't catch up to that, you know? So.
And to be fair, there is something kind of fun in it being wacky when stuff like that happens. And going to a flat damage track is going to remove those moments from the game. But now we're going to have moments where the Joker flips on the attack. And we're still going to have a memorable impact from a Joker flip. It's just not going to happen after hemming and after a lot of thinking. And for those of you who are listening to this and going, but I liked setting up the ultra kill shot combo and I wanted to build the Hannah Megaton 9 damage punch you could get. Have no fear. There are still ways to layer bonuses in the game to amplify your damage and do that if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, you know, one thing that's probably worth mentioning is, you know, all 3 of us are involved in the closed beta test. Obviously, we're going to probably be seeing the open beta launch like possibly tomorrow, the 21st. We're going to do our best not to actually talk about any specifics from the closed beta. But I can tell you that with confidence, you know, there are models that we've seen even in Tara's crew that was just released, 2-3 days ago, where, you know, you've got models in there that are doing, you know, most of them are doing flat 2 damage. But if you have a model that's doing flat 3 damage, like Tara Timeless's Obliteration Claw, if you have a model that's doing flat 3 damage and you flip red Joker and your opponent flips low, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get 2 raises on the damage. So you're going to be doing 5. That's a lot. And there are models out there, I'm sure, that probably have 4 base damage. And the same thing can happen on defense. Your opponent flips a black Joker on the defense, and you've basically got carte blanche to cheat up to as many raises as you can muster and just really punish them. So it's not, I don't think that it's that dissimilar. It's just not going to be as spiky and tilting as it was, you know?
Well, and a red Joker gives you an automatic raise now, right?
If you flip it, not if you cheat it.
If you flip it. Yeah.
Now,
but
all this talk about Jokers and hitting and raises, there's a lot there about the high end of the deck. But we're flipping fewer cards, but we still have a 7 card hand now. We're all Arcanists.
Yep.
But what do you do with the other side of the spectrum? what do we do with all those weeks in our hands?
This
Well,
is one of the best mechanics.
yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Friends, Empower is great. Simply put, it's great. For me, this is where there's a ton of strategy waiting to be unlocked and dove into.
hmm
Not just from the fact that now you have to pay attention to what weak suits you have and what triggers you want from your models. Using the Terra cards that we've received as part of the beta or pre-beta release,
hmm
just quickly looking over at her cards. So Terra
There's my-
Timeless.
Mhm.
On her rewind, she's got this Crow Trigger alternate timeline. This is a trigger on an action you're taking that is, in my view, something that you're doing this because you want that specific effect. You're not doing it and, oh, I got a crow, happy day, I guess I'll take it. Being able to say, I bake this in. I need that mend trigger. I'm going to hold on to this ram and save it for that action.
Mhm.
Is, I think, going to make card management and thus the use of Empower a pretty deep place to go.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that like there's no requirement for what models can empower their attacks. Like you
Mhm.
can empower an ability for any model in the crew. It could be, a minion all the way up to a master. So it suddenly makes, even though you don't want to be blowing through your hand throwing a bunch of low cards, because let me tell you, after playing a couple of games of M4E beta, you can blow through your hand real fast.
Mhm.
Like so much faster than you can in M3E. So I think that the
Mhm.
resource management game is going to be really critically important.
Mhm.
But being able to get access to those triggers on models that otherwise can't really get them is really, really powerful. I mean, it used to be that if you had a model that had an important trigger, especially on like a once per turn action, a bonus action, something like that, if it
Mhm.
wasn't baked in, then half the time people would say, well, I'm not going to take this model because I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to get it. It's a minion. I can't stone for stuff. Well, now you can do that with everything,
Mhm.
assuming you get the right card. And sometimes you can just empower just to get the positive flip, just in
Yeah.
hopes of flipping into a better card, getting around things like friendly fire,
Mhm.
concealment rather, maybe lucking your way into the trigger you want. It's very interesting. Very
Now,
interesting.
that being said, like you said, hand management is going to be really important, and we'll get into it in a minute. But the fact that you cannot soulstone to fix your hand
Yeah.
means that knowing when and where and how to play the cards in your hand is going to be very, very important in this
Mhm.
game.
Oh yeah, huge.
I think we're going to see overall, especially at first in the edition, just like we did with third edition, a large reduction of card draw. Now
Mhm.
we'll see if it builds back
Yeah.
up like it did in third edition, where it's become ubiquitous.
Mhm.
But without having access to a lot of card draw, and most card draw seeming to be like stuck behind soul stones, like on your totems, like we
Mhm.
see on Terra's totems,
Mhm.
um, you're going to have to spend resources to draw cards, and
Right.
that's going to be important. That's going to be a really important thing because your hand, you're going to have to plot it out. You're going to have to pay
Yep.
attention. And so, where everybody's talking about worried about simplicity, we're right back to here's your decision making. Your decision
Yeah.
making is how you use your hand, and your decision making is all on you, which I think is a
hmm
really, really good place to be.
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah. I will say that, it's I think that it is deceptively deep
Mhm.
in terms like the resource management piece. And where that I think now is probably going to be the most skill expressive part of the game, knowing when to use your cards and when to let something fail
Mhm.
or use your stones. That's something that I think is definitely going to take people a lot of time to get accustomed to. It's not overtly obvious until you really see the way that these crews work and function, kind of synergistically on the table. But the difference between somebody who does know how to manage those resources and somebody that does not is going to be a very, very big difference indeed.
Mhm.
And I think this is a good place to talk about one of the places I've heard people have the most, and I initially had the most worry about, which is cheating on negatives.
Mhm.
Um, Bottom line is, you are going to ultimately have less space for good cards in your hand. So
Yeah.
cheating is going to be more, when do I prioritize cheating? Because you're not always going to be able to draw more cards so you can throw big cards away. So
Yeah.
cheating on negatives is going to keep you from being in positions where you feel bad because you're stuck on negatives and can't defend your model and it's just going to die.
Yeah.
But it's also going to force you to think about your hand, right? Like,
And building on that, like, because we're flipping way fewer cards in this edition, it is very unlikely that you're going to flip through your entire deck in a turn. It just isn't going to happen. Without all those negative flips on damage, double negative flips on damage, soulstone prevention flips, this, that, and the other.
shockwaves,
Shockwaves, simple duels all over the place. I mean, there are still simple duels, but
Right.
not to the volume, at least seemingly from what we're looking at here, that we've seen in the past.
Mhm.
I would be surprised if crews routinely flip their deck every turn like we're seeing in the current edition of the game.
Right.
Yeah.
There we are not seeing that reliable hitting the mean because you flip enough cards. So there will be turns where you just, because of how you shuffled, you hit a patch of weaks or bad flips, and so the deck luck may prove a little more swingy in that regard, and we'll have to see as open beta progresses how that ends up going. There's always going to be games where you feel like you can't outflip your opponent, and that's going to, I think, be amplified now that we're flipping fewer cards overall.
Every game I play against Jim.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But
I know for me, I think honestly, and this might just be me speaking from the perspective of somebody who's run a lot of very large events. I think that probably one of the biggest changes that I might even be a little bit apprehensive about, and we'll get to this in some of the listener comments, but is the terrain rules that are simplified but also made more complex in some other ways, and having a big emphasis on utilizing 3D space. I don't think that Malifaux is a game that's going to get to the point of seeing some of the boards that we see for like Necromunda or Infinity, where they're very tall, multi-level, bridges everywhere. That's probably not within the scope of the game, or really within even within the setting. I mean, you're not going to see a big 5-tier fantasy table unless you're somebody who's playing Mordheim and has been building this table for the better part of 5 or 10 years.
But come on, jumping from rooftop to rooftop is freaking cool.
It is cool,
Yes.
absolutely. I like the idea of utilizing more 3D space. I think that at first glance, in the comprehensive rulebook, there's definitely some work to be done in terms of things like, how do you determine line of sight? How do you determine cover? Stuff like that. But we'll get there, and that's what the open beta is for.
Agreed. I definitely think that is a place that will benefit from having more eyes on.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I think probably one of the coolest changes to this edition is really kind of expanding the way that soulstones fit into the narrative of every individual game.
So cool.
Yeah, very, very big changes for soulstones. So you don't, as we already alluded to, you can't just spend a soulstone on a master or a henchman to reduce damage taken. You can't use it to put your opponent on a negative flip on damage because there aren't damage flips anymore. There aren't really that many just generic uses for soulstones anymore. Really what you're using them for is specific abilities on your cards. So you look in the comprehensive rules under the, I think, page 44, we're on like the draining and infusing soulstone step. First and foremost, like if one of your models that's not a peon dies, you get a soulstone. Pretty cool. There's a max of 5 soulstones that you can take after hiring, so you can't gonna come into a game with like 10 or 15 stones.
Mhm.
But you're gonna find that you'll use your soulstones very frequently. Like you're in the games that I've played, your soulstone count is gonna kind of rubber band a lot during the course of the game.
Mhm.
You might start with 5, drain 3 of them for abilities, or 4 of them even for abilities on turn 1, and then start recouping soulstones as some of your models die to kind of power your abilities later in the game. The
Yeah.
tactical action that we see in the draining soulstone section is one on Titania. Just as an example, that one
Yeah.
says that you have to use 2 soulstones to
Mhm.
declare that action.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that, I think we're going to see that most summoning that isn't summoning peons or summoning like a totem back that,
Mm-hmm.
are going to require you to spend soulstone. That now with the first summon, you have to spend the soulstone for. So you're spending a resource. You're not spending as big a card because of the way they've changed summoning, which I think is mwah, beautiful. Chef's kiss. Makes so much more sense. It's so much less math. Thank you. Not a math person.
Yeah.
Thank you, weird. Not having to do complex calculus to figure out what I can summon. You just have to spend the soul stone and have the card in your hand equal to the cost that you have to spend. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
And if we take a look at some of the stuff in the Terra crew that got released, we'll notice that there are models that traditionally wouldn't have been able to use soulstones at all and have abilities or triggers that require a soulstone to use. Example would be Hardstop Herbert. He is just a cost 6 unique model. Spoilers, well, not really spoilers because it's in the document. There's no such thing as an enforcer anymore. Basically, there's masters, henchmen, unique models, which are essentially named models. And then there's minions with like rarity limits, and then peons. Peons are making a return from 2nd and 1st edition. They're basically models that they permanently have slow, and they can't take the interact action, and there's a few other restrictions around them. But you'll find that a lot of summons in the game are peons, not all of them, but some. I kind of got a little bit off track there, but when we take a look at hard stop Herbert, his onward ability has a soulstone trigger 88 miles an hour. So yeah.
And
It's cool.
lore wise, the thing about soulstones is that they are a magical resource that anyone can tap into if you have the knowledge of how it works. In 3rd edition, and to an extent in 2nd edition, this was reflected through the characteristic of the station, master, henchman, or the ability attuned. What we're just seeing here is that in the lore, soulstones are maybe a little more readily available to unique models. And so instead of it being limited to certain people, the wealth has been spread amongst the crew. I will say my take on the change to soulstone usage and infusing, I see there's a lot more value for larger crews.
Yeah.
Because each model you hire refunds a stone. And if you go all in elite and build a 7 model crew, you're getting probably only 5 stones back of value over the course of the game. Whereas a crew that has maybe 9 models, you get just a few more stones that you can get back and not lose your game plan.
But now let's talk about the payoff for that, because I think it's something that we kind of missed in here. The payoff for having low model crews is that you will very often be going first because of the initiative system.
Right.
They almost flat out borrowed the initiative system from Marvel Crisis Protocol, and I think it's great. I think it's really great. I think it solves the pass token problem that we had. It solves the insane overaction programs we had and problems we had in 2nd edition. I like that. I like the fact that like you get benefits for bringing small guys, and you also get benefits for bringing short crews or smaller crews. But I think you're also not going to see as many of those 7 model crews because you can only have 4 soulstones. You don't have upgrades, You don't have upgrades to take, so you're going to want to like smash that wall as close to 4 soul stones as you can get. Otherwise, you're just
Point-
losing
Yeah.
points.
Point of order. It's 5 soul stones.
It's 5 soul stones. Sorry.
5 soul stones.
Yeah. It's the problem with beta testing, guys.
Things
rules
change.
on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5, you can only have 5 soul stones. So you're going to want to push 45 points of models as much as you can, because A, you want your soul stones back. B, smaller models seem to be a little more sturdy most of the time. And you want this ability to score points as fast as possible, because you want to be off to the races turn 1.
And I'll tell you that from playing a number of playtest games with certain crews, like, you could start the game with 5 soul stones, but depending on how you unpack and how aggressively you use some of your abilities, like one of the crews that I played a couple of times, I could easily have spent 4 soul stones in the first turn just using it for, putting additional tokens that were going to benefit my models onto them, moving things up the board, doing normal like unpack type stuff. Now, is spending 4 soul stones turn 1 a wise move? Maybe, maybe not. But again, that plays into the whole resource management aspect of the game, which is the thing I find the most interesting.
Yeah. And as far as why you might want to be, going pedal to the metal from the get-go, as we've referenced a few times, truly the best part of 4th edition for me is the new scheme system.
Yeah.
The evolving encounter system.
Super cool.
What was your thoughts when you first jumped into the beta? And obviously we'll not get into specifics. When you first jumped into the beta and they dropped this on us, I remember you and I, Jim, we were playing that night. What were your initial response? Because I remember you and I were just kind of we're a little stunned, right? Because this is so different than anywhere they've ever taken the game before.
I was pulling out the whiteboard. I was getting the yarn and the little thumbtacks, and I was trying to make, see the matrix. I think what we have now is a system that is fluid, and I think there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate and attempt to solve, air quotes, what lines are best in a given scheme setup. And what I enjoy about this from a balance perspective is that if you look at the schemes that the scheme that was released, I forget what week it was, or what part of the week, the 15th, it shows 3 next available schemes so every scheme has a reveal requirement, it has a scoring requirement, and additional VP requirement. So you can get between 1 and 2 VP any turn of the game, turn 1 through turn 4, and then you pick the next scheme to go to. Mulliganing a scheme, if you can't take it, is great because you're no longer screwed because you picked the wrong scheme at the start of the game for your plan or whatever. But 2, if the game gets to a point where, oh geez, we solved GG0, all they got to do is shuffle the next available schemes, and suddenly the lines of play on the board completely change. Like, if Scout the Rooftops needs you to be in certain parts of the board, like, in 3rd edition, Outflank or Power Ritual, you have to go wide. Breakthrough, you have to go deep. Sweating Bullets, you have to go into the center. They all have positional requirements, and we've talked about positional schemes before. This new setup, a lot of positioning is important. And if you change how positions feed into each other, you're changing how the narrative of the game is going to go. And I just think that there's a lot there.
I agree. It's so cool. And after having played several games with it and really getting it, what I like the most is that you don't ever feel locked out of a plan. You can go to the next scheme and grab a new plan. You can hold on to that scheme, try to score it the next time. You can score that scheme this turn and try to score the second scheme, the second point of it, if you know that you're not going to get those this turn. So you can set yourself up for one of those extra ones. There's so many different ways that you can score that what happens is, and I don't know if this is y'all's experience, but it's been my experience with fourth edition so far. Turn one, somebody runs in, they hit their points, all their points they need to hit. You're feeling behind. You get the catch up mechanic on the strategy to help you kind of like push back, and then the next turn, you go in and you have a good turn that you manage to score because you've switched up what you're going to do. And so suddenly you went from falling behind on turn one to catching up on turn two to it being anybody's game on turn three. That's not something that third edition did.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, third edition, if you got behind, you were going to stick behind. And even if and it was so predictable a lot of times that like by the end of turn 2 or 3, you could say, I'm going to lose this one by 1 point. There's nothing I can do to not lose this by at least 1 point.
And then it's a matter of like, why am I continuing to play this game when I could be going to do something else?
How much game do I want to play to keep my diff up?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But I like that. I like the fact that it feels more fluid and it feels like you can be locked out less efficiently. Now, that being said, I have not played against any crew that feels like it's going to just dome half your models off the board by turn 2. So I'm waiting to see if that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, I agree. And then, you know, I really like at least when we take a look at Scout the Rooftops, for example, you know, I like that there is a way to score 1 point from the scheme that's a little bit easier, but you can do the hard mode version and score an extra VP. But it's not like you can, like, if you score it the first time, you have to move on to another scheme. You don't have an opportunity to score the second point on that one scheme. You're kind of forced into continuing to kind of change up your strategy and your approach to the game. I really like that quite a lot.
Yeah, yes. You can't just sit and farm that one scheme. Yeah.
Right. And
exactly.
And with scoring being every turn, third edition scoring, no points available turn 1.
Yeah.
3 out of 8 points are locked behind turn 5. That means you have 3 turns to score 5 points. And of them, you can score 3 on turn 4. So 6 of your 8 points can be scored turns 4 and 5 of the game, which means turns 1 through 3. Any effort you put into scoring VP and not killing enemy models doesn't have as great a return on investment as killing enemy models first. Here, you can, in fact, emphasize scoring the hard mode of your schemes and finish up schemes by the mid of the game. And if you get tabled after turn 2, you've still scored 4 of your 5 scheme points in the first 2 turns of the game. That's a play style that kind of disappeared, and when I was getting into Malifaux in 2nd edition was something that really drew me into the game, that it's not just kill a foe.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, in 3rd edition, you know, people would always say, well, Malifaux's cool because you can get tabled and still win the game. In 3rd edition, especially late 3rd edition, like, that didn't really happen anymore. I can't remember a single time that happened. But at least probably in the last 2 or 3 years, to be perfectly honest.
Everybody remembers the good old Colette practice production clues of 2nd edition.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you know, that describing practice production by Colette sounds like something that's signature to her card, like a signature action.
Well done.
It sure does.
Well done.
It was a good segue.
You're welcome for the setup, Jim.
Thank you. Yeah. What do we think about signature actions as opposed to bonus actions?
Signature actions are cool. So just for anybody who's not familiar with them, essentially many models, not all models, but many models have a signature action. It has a little lightning bolt symbol next to it. They look kind of like a bonus action from previous editions. Essentially, a model can take their signature action and it doesn't count towards their action limit. But unless that signature action has some sort of restriction on it that says once per turn, like Karina's from the Terra crew, for example, you can continue to take your signature action multiple times a turn as regular, and it still counts against your action limit. So when we take a look at Karina, she's got 2 signature actions. She's got her arcane shot, which is just her regular, magic attack. By the way, there's magic attacks and projectile attacks. We're going to talk about that perhaps, or perhaps not. But then she also has a second signature action, Time Warp. Time Warp is once per turn. So you can either use your signature action for Time Warp, and then you don't have an extra signature action to use with Arcane Shot, which normally you'd be able to do twice. Or you could budget your signature action for a third Arcane Shot, even though you're still taking it as a standard action. You could still take Time Warp with a regular AP. Like, it's very interesting, and I think it opens up opportunities for models that are especially lower cost ones to still feel like they get the benefit for that, the free AP that you'd always be looking for with a bonus.
Yeah. There's 2 things that I want to add to this conversation at this moment. The first is that it is a crime. It is a crime that Karina does not have a trigger to do the Time Warp again.
Yes, I agree. It is weird.
It is weird.
We're just going into open beta. You can fix this.
Yeah.
You can fix this.
But the second thing is, this also means that your models are doing more things on a given turn. Yes, the game went from 5 turns to 4 turns. Before, a lot of models were only hired if they had a relevant bonus action. Now, more models feel like they have 3 AP or 3 actions per turn, as opposed to before where it was 2 and sometimes a third. So you're doing more stuff. Your actions are denser, which I think leads to more decision points in the, I get a signature on my activation. What signature am I using when? That's another area for tactical depth.
Yep. And we've seen on Karina's card as an example that sometimes you can have a signature action that's your actual damage dealing attack. So that without you having to spend, without Weird having to spend extra text on the front of the card to put on something like Rapid Fire or Flurry, they can just make the attack a signature action. And then you have the option to take it again.
Unless
so
it's
it
the Time
simplifies
Warp.
things. Unless it's the Time Warp. Weird, we're talking to you. Jonathan Weird. Fix this problem. The other thing that I don't necessarily think it's like a huge action or a huge change, but it's something that's going to affect certain crews. At first, I was a little upset when I read about the 5 marker limit. This is coming from somebody who is a degenerate and likes to play pit trap themed Mawtucket and drop like 800 pit traps on the table and make my opponent's life utterly miserable. Now there's a 5 marker limit per marker type per crew. So if you drop pit traps or pianos or rift markers, you can never have more than 5 on the table. If you drop a new one, you have to pick up one from somewhere else first. That also counts for things like remains markers, which take the place of corpse and scrap markers now. Basically any kind of markers that you can drop, you're capped at 5 per marker type.
And this will be really important because your scheme markers, you can't just flood the board with scheme markers anymore.
Right. Exactly.
This is not a game where you can just throw out scheme markers, and it's going to make marker removal abilities much stronger.
Yeah,
which is why I think, to go along with this, I think a gotcha for this game early on is going to be the rule that says that you can't remove markers an enemy model is standing on.
Right.
That's going to be big. It happened just last night playing a game. That's something you've always got to be aware of, that like you might have to move or remove a model before you can do the thing. So you need to pay close attention. There's no rule limit about placing markers 4 inches away from each other anymore. That's gone. Doesn't exist. You can put markers. You can interact twice right there, which is sometimes not a bad thing, but you do have to remember that, like, in order to interact with a strategy marker, if an opponent's standing on a strategy marker, you got to remove them to do that. That's going to be a big gotcha. That's going to be something to think about a lot when you first get into the game. I think as we get more involved, it'll probably become second nature.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pay attention to that, because it's gonna
Yep.
it's gonna bite you in the ass a couple times on your first go throughs.
For sure.
I will say I have been a little wary of this, and I do want to have folks put time in looking at the marker limit. However, but I have played plenty of games where I have had markers that were technically put on the table that were not impacting the game at all, but I had to put them on the table. As a Ma aficionado, the number of 50 mils that I had to source from people to put on the table but did not impact the game.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to worry about that. And you can still put them on the table. You just have to remove the old ones. So now the markers are where the action is and not where it isn't. So it also helps reinforce the action of the game.
And having played a good chunk of Titania through beta testing, I can say that it doesn't. There's only been a couple games where I felt that frustrated by the smaller amount of on the table, and those were in games where Jim's asshole crew removed all my markers in one go. So, as all of you know, Jim sounds like a gentleman. He's a jerk.
Yeah, and I'll say, just from the perspective of the Mawtucket player and the Zip player, I have a little tackle box insert that I would take with me anytime I went to go play a game of Malifaux. And I had one whole slot of it dedicated to fitting nothing but 15 pit trap markers. And then another row that had 12 piano markers. The amount, the reduction in the amount of stuff that I'm going to have to bring with me to a typical game session is actually going to be a pretty significant quality of life improvement. I never need to have more than 5 of any given marker type. I can easily fit all of that into one.
Yeah. Not having to bring a whiteboard to keep up with poison markers for Brewmaster.
Yeah.
Love it. Now that being
Absolutely.
said, and I'm sure that the Etsy people and all that will jump on it quickly. There are more condition markers to tokens to keep
Tons
up
more.
with. So those will be, but that brings me to something that I think is really cool. That's one of those key things we should really talk about. Crew cards. Crew cards are fantastic. They take the place of upgrades this edition.
No more general upgrades. Sorry, Nathan, you don't get lead line coat anymore.
No lead line coat for all you.
Sorry to
guildies.
all my Arcanist friends and their Arcane Reservoir and all my Reser buddies with their Whisper and RIP 12 cups of coffee.
Pour out 12 cups of coffee.
That's right.
I'm going to pour out 12 cups of coffee.
I love
for all my homies.
I love the crew cards. I think they're fantastic. Yeah. I love the fact that on the back of the crew cards you have a list of every token that your crew can put out. Not except for the generic ones, which there are now 3 generic ones that you can put out. But having those 3 or those on the list means that you can show that to your opponent. Or I'm sure when we get the app, it'll be in the app, and you can look and say, okay, these are the only 4 things that I should really have to worry about. Do they put out injured, they put out staggered, they bolster their crew, they throw out adaptable tokens. Okay, cool. I got it. That's it. That's what your crew does. This is what your crew's focus on. And you can look at the front of the crew card and see, oh, okay. Hold on, let me pull up Obliteration again. You can look at and see oh, okay, they're playing Terra 1. They're going to be using Glimpse the Void to place a lot. Cool. They're going to be using echo markers. Gotcha. I know what they do. And instead of going up and having a 40-minute conversation with your opponent before the game, well, what does my crew do? Well, this model does this, and this model does this, and this model does this, and this model that I hired in out of Keyword does this because it works with this crew. Give me your crew card. Oh, okay, that's what your crew does.
Yeah.
2 things I want to add here. The first is the intent, as I understand it, is that the boxes with the cards are going to come with 2 copies of each crew card so that you can hand a physical copy to your opponent to have and reference throughout the game. Again, once the app is updated, which they said there is going to be an app, you'll have a digital version as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that both versions of each master are getting a core box. So
Yep.
I think we're reaching a point where we can no longer really call them Terra 1 and Terra 2.
Right.
But now we have
Yeah.
titles for them. So, and this is a small thing for me, I think it's much cooler to say, oh, I'm a Void Collar main, but sometimes I'll go ahead and I'll play Timeless, instead of saying,
Yes.
oh, I only play Terra 1, and every now and then I'll play Terra 2.
Yep. I'm gonna say it here first, and I said it actually when titles first got introduced on an episode. I was committed to only using the titles' actual names, and then the entirety of the internet disagreed with me, and things
Come
became
on.
just Terra 1,
They
Terra 2,
created a
and
title
eventually
called
I relented.
They created a title
Eventually I
called
relented.
Mechanical Meemaw.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Why don't you use that?
Yeah,
Why don't
exactly.
you? As a girl from the South, why don't you use that?
Yes. So I think the thing that's the most exciting to me about crew cards is like it's nice to have, you know, the back of the card that says like, okay, you drop, you know, you do echo, you use backtrack, you know, you get flicker tokens, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
The thing that's actually the most exciting for me is the front side of the crew cards, where it shows things like, for example, I'm looking at Beyond Time, which is Terra Void Caller's crew card. Friendly obliteration models gain the following action. Then they get it. And then friendly unique obliteration models gain the following action. So not minions, you're talking named models.
Mhm.
So if you take a look at Fleeting Moments, which is Terra Timeless's, hey, look at that. Friendly obliteration models gain a different ability, and friendly unique obliteration models gain another unique ability. It essentially it opens up Weird's design space in a couple of different ways. First, by getting rid of general upgrades like Leadline Coat.
Mhm.
Sorry, Nathan. They don't have to worry about balancing a whole faction around having access to Leadline Coat anymore, which has always been a problem with Guild. If
Mhm.
they had gone back and changed Leadline Coat, it would have unbalanced a bunch of things that were balanced around having access to it. Now, they can have all the keyword models be a little bit more bare bones, a little bit more basic looking, and then every single one of those keyword models can get adjusted to suit the play style of the version of the master that you're playing. And
Mhm.
then it's not like you have to worry about those abilities getting copied onto versatiles and out of keywords, because they don't get the abilities that are on the crew cards. So I think that it's actually going to make it much easier for Weird to a lot more. I mean, they could theoretically, using this mechanic, make third versions of the masters. And quite
Mhm.
frankly, it wouldn't be that big a deal. Like, it's not like they would screw up the balance of the other models. And if they have to fix a master from an errata standpoint, they don't have to adjust a bunch of different models in the crew to fix what was wrong with the master. They just adjust the master and the master's crew card, and that's pretty much it. Maybe
Yeah.
the totem. Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
Very
So,
exciting.
just as a right on to that effect, in the obliteration file we have, if you take a look at Hard Stop Herbert, he's got one attack and one tactical action. With either crew upgrade, he gains a second tactical action and either a third tactical action and a second attack action.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at as when the files come out, if you're evaluating the crew cards, remember that every model you're looking at probably has one or two additional actions that's not printed on their card.
Yep.
So if you think, this guy he's got a token attack and a token tactical action. Actually, he's got way more than that. And he completely mode shifts when he goes for the other title of his master.
Mm-hmm. There's a few other things that we see on these crew cards that I definitely want to call out.
Mhm.
You know, one of the things that Maeve mentioned before was the changes that were made to summoning. We don't need to get into great detail on that because I know some other folks have, but Weird has done one of the things that I had been hoping we would see for a very, very long time, and that's added a summoning target number to summonable models that is divorced from their actual soulstone cost.
Mhm.
That's huge, because that means that if a model is too good as a summon, but they don't want to actually change the model, and they don't want to change the cost for hiring it. They just change the summon target number.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, if it's too weak and they need to bring the summon target number down, it's also easy to rebalance around that.
Mm-hmm.
We see Void Hunter, which is a cost 6 model, but you need a 9 to summon it, and all summoners' abilities have a stat of 0. So that means you need to have a 9 card flipped or cheated in order to get it, plus whatever other requirements there are around, triggers, soulstone usage, that kind of thing. We also see on the same crew, Nothing Beast. It's a 9 cost model. It's a beefy model too, but it has a summoning target number of 13. So there's literally only 5 cards in the whole deck that you can summon that with.
Mm-hmm. And really makes it, being able to summon unique models, I think, gives me hope for a lot of the models in the game who are associated with a summoner and are things you may not necessarily want to hire every game, but that you want to see on the table. So,
And then, yeah, very, very cool stuff. I think it's a great move. And it's, again, easier to balance. It gives them more leeway and design space. So these are all things that I love to see, because the flexibility that Weird is giving themselves with the overall design of the game is going to mean that, quite frankly, we're probably going to see, or they're going to have the ability to do erratas and adjustments more frequently than twice a year, and sometimes only once a year. They're going to be much more nimble in their ability to rebalance things.
I do hope so.
Yes. The last thing that I want to mention on the summon upgrade, or the summon upgrades, the crew cards and the crews themselves are, I think it's very, very cool that Tara has different totems depending on which iteration of Tara you're playing. So Tara Voidcaller, it says on the front of the card, her totem is Karina, but then if you take a look at Tara Timeless, her crew, or her totem is the Scion of the Void. Now, if you take a look at Karina and Scion of the Void, these are not hireable models. They have no soulstone cost. You can't take them at all unless it's with that version of the master. I'm excited to see what they do with some of those other things. Maybe there's models like, Big Brain Bryn, who's going to be a totem instead of a hireable model, that now they have to try and balance around the rest of the stuff in the faction. They can make that model do super cool stuff that is very specific to that master and might be game breaking with other masters, but you can't hire it with any other masters, so it doesn't matter.
And this is another cool thing too, because this is more future proofing for if they want to do more tiles, or for if they decide that they want to make another master that fits in with the keyword. I mean, and this is speculation, but I've been saying for a while that it would be really cool if we saw a master version of a henchman. Right?
Yeah.
So you might want to take Ionis and turn him into Timeless Master, whatever, for how well, all you have to do is put out an alt Ionis with his own totem, and then bam, you have a third master for the keyword, and you've done 2 models worth of work.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw Ithana get released in 3rd edition, the henchman for Titania, I was like, Ithana's lore is way more deep than a henchman. This should be a master.
Yeah.
And this does exactly that. It gives you the ability to say, okay, the new Fey master is Ithana.
Right, let's go.
And
let's go.
And we have, as of now, know that at least 2 henchmen are becoming masters in the in the process. We know Dr. Silas we all knew he was supposed to be a master. He was just masquerading as a henchman.
Right. Also, sorry once again, Nathan, for the fact that you're probably going to lose Grimwell.
Yeah, sorry, bud.
And Rusty is getting promoted to master as well. So
I, for one, am not sad to see Levy go.
And Weird, Mancha Roja master, please.
Yeah. And here's some little precognizance and potentially from my perspective, but you know what a great way to introduce a second master for an existing keyword would be? Lilith as another Nephilim master if she comes back from imprisonment.
Yeah.
Well,
The fact that
we'll
she's
call
an
it medical
official
stasis.
Yeah. The fact that she's an
But
official proxy now makes that less likely.
well, I mean,
But-
that's just an old model. They're going to make new models. There's no
That's true.
reason that they can't have a titled version of Lilith
Yeah.
that is a new master. Why not?
Just
I
call
will
her
say-
Lilith Back in Black.
Yeah. I mean,
will
wouldn't
say
you
that
love
I'm
to see what a
super-
new Lilith master model would look like,
Oh.
or a new Ramos, or a new Collodi, or
Ew,
Don't tease me
Collodi.
with Ramus. Ramus was my second edition favorite. My boy.
I'm just saying that this is the perfect opportunity for us to see some of those Dead Man's Hand models come back into the game without needing to have
on a second.
whole new
Hold on a
crew
second.
boxes. They could literally just have Ramos and his totem, and then and a crew card, and it just slots into the rest of MNSU.
Could be. We will see where they go. They
Mhm.
have been very clear that as of the launch, nothing that was Dead Man's Hand in the transition from second to third is coming back as anything other than a proxy. And at this stage, it's now been how many years since third edition came out?
A lot.
In
A lot of years.
2019, I think it was 2019, 20.
Okay.
20, yeah.
Yeah, so around 5 to 6 years. I think at this point, the characters who were in the Dead Man's Hand have been away for long enough that if you played in second edition and you're coming back and you're listening to this, wanting to get everything you can about fourth edition, know that at this time, there's no plan for them to come back as anything other than proxies. So,
And as somebody who's never lost anything to Dead Man's Hand, I don't feel so terrible just trying to build up people's hopes and dreams and then seeing them shattered on the ground in 5 years when they don't get their models back.
Well, I think
Sorry, y'all.
I appreciate that Weird is not going to do a Dead Man's Hand on us again.
Yeah.
I don't think the optics on that worked. I think that there was room for them to possibly play with it, and it never really got played with. And I think that was a little. I think that created some bad feels. That's how I will put that.
Yeah,
as
it certainly
politically
did.
as possible. This way, people still get to play with their toys. There's still going to be bad feels when people see how models bounce around, because we know there's going to be no, that we're losing a lot of cross faction models. People are going to have some bad feels, and what I have to say to address our listeners right now who are feeling that kind of way about it, every edition has growing pains.
It's true.
Every edition has growing pains. There's going to be something, and it's going to kind of suck. And I hate that if that one thing pushes you completely out of the game. I understand if it's the straw that breaks the camel's back or whatever. But what I say is, give it some grace, take some time, play the new rules, see how you like the new rules, and maybe if such and such master or keyword goes to a faction you don't play, and you find out that you can just play that keyword, and you don't really we don't have upgrades anymore, so you don't need to worry about the upgrades. You can still play that keyword, and chances are you're probably going to more than likely play just that keyword and not bring in a lot of versatiles and out of keyword stuff. So at least at first, we don't know how the edition's gonna fix it.
Yeah,
Fix
I mean,
itself
I kind
eventually.
of went through that same catastrophizing process when I started looking around at some of the stuff that had been teased, and I saw that there's a new model called the Iron Wing that looks very much like it belongs in Zip's crew, because it looks like an Iron Skeeter, except not spindly and terrible to try and transport. And then I was listening to Steam Powered Scoundrels, and they brought up a good point that there are Outcast logos on the Iron Wing, and there aren't any more split faction masters. So it's theoretically possible that Iron Wing might be an Outcast model that's still hireable into Infamous in Bayou, or it could very well be that maybe Zip's not in Bayou anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I can just play Zip because of the way that the new kind of keyword and hiring incentives work. I'm not going to feel so bad saying I still want to play Zip. If that's actually what's happening, I'll just go play Zip and I'll declare Outcast today. Like, who cares?
So I think it's going to be most impactful for folks who play particular factions, who are faction, like I go to an event and I want to bring this set of models, and I'm doing so under the umbrella of, I don't know, let's pick something crazy, guild. The thing that gets me, and I think we'll have to see where it goes over the course of open beta, is that when you read the section on hiring, page 63 of the comprehensive rules, it makes a point to say that you may not include more than 3 models that do not share a keyword with your leader, regardless of faction and whether they're versatile. I take that to mean that there will still be models that are in faction A when their master is in faction B. And they may, in fact, be a case where in faction A, they're a versatile model that also has a keyword. I'm thinking of how in 3rd edition Bash is a December model in Bayou. I don't know if that's going to still be the same for, your insert your cross faction master keyword here, but that's something that is, as my read, possible still. I don't think it means you're gonna all be, if you're playing Zip in Bayou or in Outcasts and it doesn't go the way you want, that you're going to be completely out in the cold.
Yeah. And, theoretically, there could be situations where there are some models that I personally just can't use anymore. And that would be disappointing. I'm not just going to sugarcoat everything. As an example, I look at the Keens, Irina and Altus Keen. Since they came out, I've been playing them in basically I'd say almost every Anya game that I've run. And I've been playing Anya a lot. She's quickly become one of my favorite masters to play in the entire game. Well, if they become Arcanists and they don't have the Syndicate keyword anymore, then these 2 models that I really love, I love the aesthetics, I did conversions on them, I painted them up nice. If I'm not able to play them anymore, it's going to feel kind of bad because I don't have any Arcanists at all that I could even theoretically play them with. So I think there are going to be some models that get kind of left out in the cold. Hinamatsu maybe will be just 10 Thunders. Maybe pick your poison. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's a ton of cross faction models out there. There's probably some stuff you are going to lose. And are you going to lose whole keywords? I don't think so. Not in the sense that you did in the past. I think it's a lot easier in this new system, the way that it's shaping up, to say, I am a Terra player and I am a Lucius player at the same time. I have both of these keywords. They're not in the same faction, and I don't necessarily need cross-pollination between the two to make my collection work.
Yeah, and I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's why we have open beta. And as we've said, make your voice be heard.
That's it.
And speaking of letting your voice be heard, did we want to go into some of those listener questions you had collected?
Yeah,
nailing
absolutely.
It with the segues. Nailing it.
Absolutely. I do want to touch on just one thing before we get on to the listener feedback, and that is the stuff that I was really kind of the most passionate about, and that's making the game more approachable for new players, easier to teach, and easier to build communities around. I know that all 3 of you have been involved in building communities and helping to maintain communities in the areas that you live. And that's been a big complaint of mine for a very long time. Frequently, somebody will be interested in a demo, I'll run the demo, and I either have to dumb the system down so much that it's not really a good representation of how an actual game of Malifaux plays, or the demo is just too damn complicated and they feel lost and ultimately they don't come back for
No.
another game.
Oh, I have a good perspective on this because
Go
we
ahead.
have a local. Finally, I have, and I'm thinking some of these people will be listening to this. So hi guys.
Mm.
Finally, I have a local gaming club that is interested in learning how to play Malifaux. Unfortunately, a lot of them just started now, so they're going to have to
Mhm.
relearn all the rules. But as an alternative to looking at GW games, which are massively more expensive, um, being able to get people into this, I think, is going to make it's going to be so much easier, especially when the new crew boxes come out. It's going to be harder at first until they start putting product out. But being able to say, oh, you like the look of this, well, Ma just happens to have a whole core box. Ma 1 has a whole core box. Buy this whole Ma 1 core box, you should be able to get a good idea of what Ma's playing like from here. And then you'll only have to buy a couple more boxes to fill it out. The new way that it looks like they're packaging models, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The other thing is we are getting a two player starter box. They've said that. We are getting a new box. We don't know what's in it yet. We don't know. I think they did mention to be 14 new models. We don't know what
Mhm.
they're going to look like. We don't know what they are. We don't know what factions they're going to be. But we're getting a new starter box. And I taught several people in second edition how to play with the old starter box.
Mhm.
And it was a great way to teach the game the way that it worked. The models were not good models rules wise, and so they didn't get used until Angel Eyes got fixed in this
Mhm.
edition. And now, unfortunately, R.I.P. Angel Eyes for Neverborn. Sounds like she's going to be going off to Silas's land.
Yeah.
But we, I think it's going to be easier because I think we can do. I think especially as a keyword thing, we can be like, oh yeah, go talk to this guy. That's our Ma
Mhm.
player. Go talk to this lady. She's our Karai player.
Yeah.
You get that, and I think you'll start seeing a lot more people being like, yes, I'm the Karai player,
Mhm.
or yes, I play this faction, but I like this keyword, and so you get like those insights. I think the game with the crew cards and with less things to learn from like the bulk of the game rules and more things on the cards will become easier because I shouldn't have to spend, like I said before, 30 minutes telling you exactly what my crew does so that you
Yep.
don't feel knocked out of a game. You don't have to remember how to score all of these insane schemes for the whole game because you get new ones and you get to look through and you get to flip through and so you don't have to be like, oh well, how do I score this second point in the third turn of the like on turn 5 or whatever. I think it's a lot simpler. I think the rules, I've been a big board game player for a very long time too, and the one thing I can tell you is that my favorite games are the games I can sit down and teach you in 20 minutes
Mhm.
and then we find the depth as we play.
Yeah. And I think even just getting somebody started is going to be a lot easier because, I mean, now you just pick one scheme.
Yeah.
You have a selection of schemes, you pick one, and you can give them guidance on what the crew they're using is going to be best suited to playing. When they can score the scheme or they decide to abandon it, they just get to move on through the process, pick a new scheme. And I don't think it's going to create so much uncertainty at the start of the game with them being like, well, you got to pick 2 schemes out of these 5 and you need to think about what your crew can do. Oh, well, your crew's not good at going off on the flanks. It really sticks in the middle. So you shouldn't really pick this one. And it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
I also really like, and we're kind of jumping ahead of one of the listener comments, which we'll circle back to this when we get there. But I really like the fact that there's going to be 2 different versions of the rules. There's going to be a simplified version of the rules, the core rules, and then there's going to be the comprehensive rules. There are some other game systems that have tried to do that, like Infinity with Code 1. My understanding was that it wasn't, I did not play Infinity at that time. I still barely play Infinity. I've got like a demo under my belt and that's it. But my understanding is that it wasn't really, the 2 rule sets weren't close enough to make them like a natural progression of understanding the way the game works. Obviously, we haven't seen the core rules. We've only seen the beta version of the comprehensive rules. But my hope is that the 2 are going to be maybe a little more similar to each other than that. But I love the fact that we do have a simplified rule set. It sounds like the starter box is actually going to have some like a narrative progression of specific scenarios, which hopefully is going to be tuned to introducing a new player to the game. You know, simplified scoring, specific schemes that you can select, maybe even no scheme selection at all in the first game. Maybe they just dictate to you, this is what you're doing for this crew, and that's it. Those are all great steps, because one of my big beefs was that, you know, we had all these starter boxes, which is great. I actually really liked the starter box concept, especially as compared to the way that the 2-player starter was put into place back in 2E, which I didn't particularly care for.
Yeah.
The starter boxes were like kind of a good first step, but we didn't have a specific demo format. And the starter box models had to be made in such a way that they would fit into the larger faction as a whole, but also it made it very difficult to develop a starter format that would work with all of them. It wasn't until very late in the edition that I finally decided that, you know, the Arcanist starter, after it was errated and a little more reasonable, and the newer guild starter were pretty good across the table from each other, and I could make a set scenario that I could utilize those models in. But unfortunately, that didn't happen until basically, like, you know, Captain Con of this year. So took a long time to get there. Sounds like we're going to be getting there right from jump, which I'm very excited about. So after that little diatribe that I just went on, let's actually let some listeners talk, shall we?
Yeah.
So I think that what we're going to do is we're going to go through these pretty fast, because there are a lot in here. We're not going to get too bogged down in conversation, because I think that a lot of the stuff we've talked about is going to be directly applicable to the comments that we have here. But I'll just read it off, and you guys can give your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next. So first one comes from Macabrius on the Boring Conversation Discord channel. And they said that they're concerned about unintuitive line of sight examples, such as if you take a look at page 29 of the comprehensive rulebook, without actually having to look at the picture. Essentially, we have a model standing on height 4 terrain 5 inches away from the edge, and then there's another model at ground level in base contact with the terrain. But because of the way that the line of sight rules and height rules work, those models can actually still see each other. I do tend to agree with them that that is a very unintuitive way to calculate whether or not a model has line of sight to another one. They feel like the model on elevation should need to be at least within like 2 inches of the edge of the terrain piece. What do you guys think about that?
I have a thought on this. I think that they've kind of countered that a little bit by allowing models that are on a different height from you to have cover. So the idea is that these, we're looking at it from a game standpoint, and I think sometimes you have to look at it from a cinematic standpoint. If you've ever seen a cowboy shootout movie, they're not just standing still. They're on the roof. They're moving from place to place. They're dodging. They're moving. So giving them cover still makes it feel like, yeah, we're going to take shots at you. You know, we're in the. I guess you have to like work your thinking around it. In a single model's activation, it's running up and then shooting is how we look at it. But what's probably really happening if you're watching a movie is that it's running up shooting the whole time, right? And the model is hiding the whole time. It's dodging from, you know, the model on top of the bill is dodging from box to box to rim, trying to fire back or whatever, or trying to take cover. So I think that like sometimes, and I know I'll probably get a little bit of hate for this, but yes, we are playing a minis game. But I think sometimes we need to step back and think about like, this is also a game we really, really want to look at from also the story we're telling. And one of the things I think that like, so if you look at first edition was the most gonzo thing there ever was. I mean, it was just bonkers. Anybody who played first edition will tell you they just went all out with themes, crazy ideas. The rules barely made sense, but it was fun. Second edition really zoomed into, we want crews to feel like they're doing the things that they look like they're supposed to be doing. So there was a lot of like action and a lot of the rules built towards thematic instead of really a lot of rules. Third edition, I think, was very deeply cored into what the rules need to be and how tight the rules should be in a game,
Mhm.
which was the design standpoint around the time third edition came out, so that makes sense. Fourth feels like it's giving us a bit somewhere between second edition and third edition. We're getting tight rules, but we're also getting a lot of thematic options as well, such
Mhm.
as cover on higher terrain, jumping around off buildings instead of having to go down and back up and whatever.
Mhm.
You know, using soul stones thematically. Um, all of that to say
Mm-hmm.
that, like, if you spend too much time thinking about it from a, well, this is purely a game perspective, I think you're cutting out half of the fun of what Malifaux
Mm.
is. They get cover when they're on a different thing. That's perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
To
So,
me, at least.
go ahead, Jim.
Yeah.
so I agree with what you're saying, and that Malifaux has billed itself as a narratively driven skirmish game. I do see the point that someone who's that far from on the other side of a relatively large building, it'd be difficult to see when you can't see over the edge yourself. And the good news is the rulebook does address this. It states that for particularly large terrain pieces, such as the one that's the 5-inch building, players may want to treat them as halves. So each is a 2.5-inch wide segment of building. And in that case, you'd have a piece of blocking terrain that's taller than only one model, and thus line of sight is blocked.
Yeah.
And it explicitly says to avoid counterintuitive situations. Now, that's an optional rule. We might find that
Yeah.
we want to make it a mandatory rule. Each 2-inch segment of a large rooftop is treated as a separate piece of terrain. That might be too complex.
Yeah,
But
I'm going to end up having to get a little fine tip Sharpie and a ruler and measuring out little lines that go across the top of each one of my roofs.
yeah, but like
Um,
I
yeah.
see the thing, but in order for us to have a miniature game that is both on the X and Y axis and on the Z axis, I think the method that Weird has used in the current draft rule set is pretty darn good.
Yeah, by and large. I
Mhm.
do agree with Macabrius. I feel like this specific situation is unintuitive enough that it would be a turnoff for me, especially if, I was learning the system and there's a dude up on a rooftop shooting me with, a rifle from 12 or 14 inches away. And there's no other intervening terrain. My first
Mhm.
inclination would be I'm just going to run right up against the terrain so that he can't see me. But in this situation, he can. I think that the narrative element and the gameplay element both need to be in balance. And I think that narrative element also kind of gets lost in this specific situation because realistically, that's probably what you would do. You would run right up to the base of the building so that the sniper couldn't get sight lines on you. So I don't know. We'll see. I think this is
Mhm.
one of the things that the draft version of the rules is still quite early, and we may see some adjustments to. Like we kind of alluded to before,
Mhm.
the terrain rules are probably the thing that I think are going to need some of the most work in the
I
core
agree.
rulebook. So we'll see where this goes. But
And
the
we've,
best way to do
yeah.
it is to play games and provide feedback.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Play games,
Yeah.
see how it feels, come back
hmm
to us. That's why we're doing open beta.
Mhm.
So we've done a good job at being giving concise answers to questions at this point. So we're going to move on to the second one and see how we do on this. It's a me, Joshio, on Discord wonders how much summoning has changed. They've been painting Karai, envoy of the court, but haven't played her yet. Now they don't know if they should continue painting the crew due to all the changes that she may see.
Paint your crew. Do it. It's
Yeah,
going to be lovely.
I think you're
You're going to
fine.
love it. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, I think you're fine, Josh. Realistically speaking, nobody knows how anything is going to pan out. Presumably, Karai Envoy is still going to have some sort of summoning, but realistically, you're probably going to want to get the whole crew painted anyway. Maybe just start with doing like one of each model, and then moving on to the second of each of the minions when we get more info.
And I think it's really important to notice that, yes, it does say that summon models cannot interact. What it doesn't say is that summon models aren't usable for schemes or strategies, just that they cannot do the interact action. So if you're thinking they're going to be schemes where it's like this model must be within so such and such of a scheme marker, they will still count for that. So
Yep.
they're not losing all of their flexibility. They're just not being able to spam markers out for you. I still think summons are going to be good. I don't think we're going to see them as wholesale as we did in last edition, and I think that is a good thing.
Yes. What about you, Jim? Any thoughts?
So the big thing for me is that we've established that a summon model can't take the interact action. It does not give you a soul stone when it dies. Those are bummers. We've also established that you can't remove a marker that a model is standing on.
Mm-hmm.
You can't interact if you have to walk away from a model that's engaging you. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Summons are in a game that is as dense as 4th edition is. Summons being brought in to tie up enemies is still a very valid use of that action. But if we take a look at Terra and have a look at Void Collar, to be concise, summoning has changed because the math is easier, and summons has not changed in that they are still a viable strategy to tying up your opponent, but they are not going to do your scheming for you, allowing you to hire punchy models. Now you have to hire models for the strategy and supplement it with your summons.
And realistically speaking, Josh's comment kind of applies to every keyword out there. I mean, I've been working on painting stuff for Zoraida. I picked up the, Witches and Woes box, or not Witches and Woes. I picked up the Rotten Harvest Zoraida crew. I picked up all the effigies in the combined box. I got my Kurgan painted. I got a couple other things done. Do I stop painting that keyword because I don't know if Zoraida is going to end up in Bayou or Neverborn? No. I'm still going to continue to work on it. And if I have to dip into another faction to play it, so be it. I dip into another faction to play it. I don't think that your keyword is going to change so drastically that you're not going to want to run it. Realistically, I think what's going to happen is exactly what we've been talking about. You're probably still going to summon stuff. It's still going to look different, but don't let that stop you from enjoying your hobby time. Get it done.
That being said, I am real quick sidebar, and I'll let go. I am really, really interested to see how Wong plays out with no shockwaves and no blasts. Whizbang is going to be very different, and
he'll just do a lot of pulses. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just be targeted pulses on scheme markers that he drops at range, or he'll blow up piglets and do pulses from there. It'll be fine.
Love it.
Maybe we'll get an Uglowy upgrade again. Oh no, we don't have upgrades.
That'll be one of the crew upgrades or something. But yeah, so next question.
Yeah. So Scott Helbling on Discord asks, how many extra soul stones should a player get for having a killer mustache? As somebody who does not have a mustache, I have a beard and mustache combo. I'm going to ask if I get double or none, and then I don't know.
Only one person on this podcast has a killer set of boobs. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to say if you get half of a soul stone for having a killer mustache and half of a soul stone for having a killer set of boobs. If you have both, you deserve a free soul stone.
All I'm saying is you have to be playing Cornelius Bass.
Okay. Fair enough. Next up, Nathan Festered. Oh, dear Nathan, we're sorry about your leadline coat. On Discord has a few questions. He wonders how many times Grant and Jim will tie in Texas the first event of M4E.
Every time.
Every time. Does Maeve feel good to be free of the little green freaks for the new edition?
You know me. I will have them all probably within the first 8 months.
It's all right.
I'll
Yeah.
have them all again. It's gonna
What change do we expect or hope for? What change did we expect or hope for that does not appear to have made it into the beta rules?
We still have split fucking keywords.
We do.
Hopefully it
Anything
won't be
from
as
you,
bad.
Jim?
I'm hoping it won't be as bad, but I hate split keywords.
I don't think there's anything I have that I was hoping for that hasn't been part of the game. Yet.
Yeah.
I really want us to have a more aggressive cycle for gaining grounds.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. For me, nothing jumps to mind. I think for me, it's more a matter of making sure that the resource generation doesn't get out of control like it did in 3E. I don't want to be in a situation where if you don't have some degree of past token generation or whatever other resource, we'll say soulstone generation, or a certain threshold of card draw, that your crew is just always at a strict disadvantage. So I would love to see, that's what it is. I would love to see some sort of universal cap on the number of cards that a crew can draw in a turn, unless otherwise stated. Like, they could always make a rule that breaks that rule, but I think that having a fixed card draw limit, or a point at which it turns into a required discard before you draw, would make a lot of sense, because I don't want to see another Tiri the Nomad that draws like 8 cards a turn for free. Not good.
You can't be upset at her.
You can't be upset at her.
Her name is Nomad.
Nomad. Yes, good. And then last question: which one of us will paint his propagandist for him?
Not it.
You do not want me to paint any of your models for you, Nate. Sorry.
I think he got Muffin Mage to agree to paint it, but I would paint it for him.
We both have me and Jim both have our fingers on our nose, so Maeve, I guess it's on you.
That's fine. So Nathan, what this means is that you have to come to Camping for Gamers so that you can get your propagandist.
That's it.
For some actually good questions.
Yeah, we have some. So Lyriel on Discord has 4 questions. How do we feel about the printed core rules being used as more of an onboarding tool, while the comprehensive rules will live online with regular updates and FAQs? Will the when in doubt, the comprehensive rules take priority rule make running events easier or harder? I think we've already kind of addressed this. I don't think that it's going to make it harder, because I don't really think that many people would run an event based on the core rules. They would probably say they're using the comprehensive. But until we actually see the fleshed out versions of both, it's tough to say. I think that it might maybe make it a little more difficult for a very new player to jump into an event before they've actually had a chance to crack into the comprehensive rules. But even based on what we've seen, I think the existing comprehensive rules are still simpler than the M3E rulebook. So I don't think it's that big a deal.
I like
Any
having
thoughts from the peanut gallery?
I like having an authoritative, this is the document you go to for rules arbitration. Understanding that there will be an FAQ and an errata eventually.
Yeah,
I agree. Next up, the updates to +1 Soulstone cost, lack of keyword synergy due to no crew card support. That distinction between ally and friendly, and the cap of 3 out of keyword or versatile models. Seems like M4E is nearly mandating keyword hiring. Do we agree and have feedback?
Yes and yes. Yes and yes.
Yeah, I would agree that it's much more heavily incentivizing keyword hiring, while still giving you the flexibility to maybe bring in a couple of very specific pieces of tech. I think until we see the broader scope of crews that are coming out, I don't really know how impactful that would be. But we also have to make sure that, or the devs need to make sure, and the beta testers, that the stable of models that a given keyword has access to are varied enough that you just don't end up playing the same crew every single time you play.
And I know that, like, I know that across the pond they don't see it nearly as much. But like I for one am pretty tired of going into Ten Thunders lists and there being Sidir, Fuhatsu, and Kitty Dumont before you ever even get to any
Yeah.
other person. Like I'm
Yeah,
tired of
for
Super
sure.
Friends. I want to play against thematic crews. I want to play thematic crews. I don't want to be punished for sticking to my keyword.
Yeah. And I think, some people will say, well, then I'm just always going to pick the strongest keyword models and play that every time. Well, I don't really see that that's that much different than just picking the strongest Super Friends models and playing
right,
those every time.
Right.
But at least you're going to be forced to vary your hiring based on the keyword that you take. So yeah.
My contribution here is it as a game and as a community that likes to debate the game, there will be a time when we get to a point where the community will have developed a understanding of what is perceived to be the best or the ideal in a given setup.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way the schemes work now, meaning that you have to have a plan for between three and four different schemes and have that tie into how the strategies are going to work, is going to reward different ways to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows the devs to make keywords internally interesting and have compelling choices while still allowing versatiles to exist in a space that comes into flex for your crew.
Yeah.
And have an individual crew be very different in its identity from another. I think I would personally like to see more crews be specialists than generalists, in the sense that if you're playing Von Schill, he's a crew that can go into anything in 3rd edition. Or if you're playing nowadays Asami, she can go into anything with keyword because her models are very generalist.
Yeah. We don't talk about Asami. She hurts feelings.
But if there's someone who is more, this is a crew that's really good in these conditions.
Yeah.
That I think allows you to have a wide stable of good crews, and that's going to require internal balance and testing. And I think that's where the game wants to be, in order to allow to account for the fact that we are very much pushing keyword play.
Yeah, I think that weird really is it seems like an intentional design choice to try and push people more towards saying that they play keywords and not play factions, which we've already alluded to a few times. But yeah, I like that. And quite frankly, it is a big change. I think it's one of the larger changes in this edition, if I'm being perfectly frank. But in my opinion, it's a good change. So I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, we've already kind of covered this one, but summons in M4E cannot interact at all. But is this enough? Should summoning still be part of Malifaux, and where do we see the sweet spot for balance? I don't have anything to add that we haven't already spoken about, but I think it's in a good, pretty good place. But we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got will the newly announced 2-player starter set and accompanying story campaign scenarios be a good way to onboard new players? What do we think is needed for a good onboarding experience? Yes, I do think that, and I think that it is exactly what we need for a good onboarding experience.
Yes, we need a single product that gives you all the pieces you need to play, all the tokens, all the measuring widgets, all the cards. Ideally, I would love to see some punch out terrain as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Like 2D punch out things.
Mm-hmm.
And a little booklet that says, okay, here's your first scenario, here's your second, here's your third, go play a game of Malifaux.
Yeah, when we look at the Operation Sandtrap box from Infinity, which I picked up fairly recently, it's basically the 2-player starter set for the new version. It has all that stuff. It has tokens, it has widgets, it has measuring devices, it has, cardstock, punch out terrain, everything you need to. It even has a playmat, a fold out paper playmat, so it literally has everything you need. It doesn't have duplicates of the terrain and the playmat, but I mean, for the second player. But hey, I mean, there's other ways to get that figured out. But that's what I think we need. Next up, Wolfbun Grant on Discord asks us to consider which faction our main is and what we hope they will get in terms of new keywords or models, either thematically or mechanically. And what are we sad or happy we may be losing or gaining? I'll just chime in and say I'm worried that I'm going to lose my buddy Zip. Bayou is still going to be my main faction. If I lose Zip, that's okay. I'll just play him in Outcasts, like I said. In terms of new stuff that I'd like to see, I think I'd really like to see Ophelia's crew get expanded on, because they're a very old set of sculpts. They haven't really gotten any love in a long time. And I think that if there are any masters in the Bayou lore that could have an appreciable impact on the overall story of Malifaux, especially with the kin kind of hanging around the red cage and being essentially the first line of defense for all the red cage abominations, I think that she's probably the one to do that. So I would love to see a completely redone line of models for kin and more story relevance for Bayou as a result.
For me, I am going Neverborn. It's the only models I really have left. I'm picking up some Ten Thunders, but I don't know how much I'm going to be playing them. But Neverborn is definitely going to be where I am. What I'm really excited about them adding is Euripides gets a totem called a Strix. And I am a huge fan of owls, so I cannot wait to see what a Malifaux Strix looks like. Should be freaking cool. If it is the art that Defective Dice showed in theirs, super excited for that.
Yeah. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of the owl from The Secret of Nim. If it looks something like that, oh man, that'd be so cool.
But Maeve, Strix are for kids.
Strix are for kids. No, they're for me. I'm a kid. I'm a big kid. I'm really sad that they're losing Cultgeists. And I assume if they're losing Cultgeists, that means they're probably keeping Crookskins, and I don't like Crookskin sculpts at all. So I'm interested to see what they balance in to kind of. I think that's one thing with these keywords, watching models switch to other keywords, seeing what they fill things back out with. So I'm really excited to see, especially to just see how Yuri's going to change with only 5 ice pillar markers, right?
Yeah.
Like I hope that they give us some more depth into how he uses ice pillar markers. As
maybe he won't drop ice pillar markers anymore at all. We don't know.
Don't do that to me. I have so many good Thune ice pillar.
Maybe Mawtucket doesn't drop pit traps. I don't know. Who knows?
That's fair. But I would be sad because I've got a lot.
How about you, Jim?
Specific.
This question is antithetical to who I am as a person, so I will not be answering it.
Abstain. All right. Wookie Gunner on Discord asks which single change we think will speed up the game the most. 4 turn scoring on turn 1. That's me. Yep.
I'm going to say the damage math.
Yeah, just less flips in general. That's
less
really
flips in general.
All the little fiddly things are going to add up more than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. 4score7 on Discord asks which smallest change do we think will have the biggest impact?
Empower.
Yeah, probably Empower. Maybe cheating negatives.
I would say cheating negatives is probably it. I think Empower is a pretty big change. Cheating negatives is probably a lot more impactful than it seems at surface level. I'm going to say that's mine. Gary Ginderhall on Discord. Oh, dear Gary. We love you so. Has a few questions. Do you think the overall feel of the game will be heavily impacted by the change to 4 turns? By that change, I don't think so. I think that Malifaux is still going to feel like Malifaux. It's just going to feel like Malifaux sooner. What are our overall feelings of the various design goals to reduce the game duration to 2 hours? Will analysis paralysis be a main contributor to extending game time like it can be in M3E? We've already kind of touched on most of this. The analysis paralysis piece is interesting, though. I'm going to say that it's going to be less common because there's just a lot less text on the cards. And I feel like there's probably more wiggle room to correct small positioning mistakes and things like that. Not having to worry about making sure that your scheme markers aren't, an eighth of an inch too close to each other and suddenly you can't drop a second one. Stuff like that.
And when in doubt, I will say this, and I've said this every time, and I play, you guys have both played against me. I play super fast games of Malifaux, and I can go for the thing that you know is going to score you a point. Don't go for the thing that might score you the point. Go for the thing that scores you the point.
Yep.
If scoring you the point means you kill this guy, kill this guy. If scoring you the point means you walk over here, drop a marker, do that thing.
I'm sure we'll have
Points
a whole
first.
improving play series like we did previously on 4th edition. So, Jim, what about you?
I think overall the goals, positive, achievable. I think they have been achieved. Will analysis paralysis be a contributor? I think it will be the main contributor to game time, just because it's where you take your time to make a decision. Not to be funny, but with fewer flips, this means now when you cheat is more impactful, and I think there will be a period of time as players get used to the new game where they're going to start to go, whoa, I really don't want to burn my hand by mid-turn.
Yeah.
Let me be a lot more cautious. And then as they get familiar with what their acceptable levels of success and failure are, they'll get
that's when
faster
things are
again.
going to start to flow a little bit. All right, and then his last question: the more robust height rules indicate a larger focus on elevated terrain and climbing in general. How do we think this will affect table design overall, and do we think Weird is pushing for terrain with multiple levels? I would say Weird is definitely encouraging us to utilize more 3D terrain, climbable stuff. They've talked about jumping between buildings. I don't know if they're trying to do multi-level terrain like we see in some of those other games like Necromunda and Infinity, but I'll tell you what, the first time that we see a Weird demo table for M4E at a major convention, that's when we're going to know what their intentions with the terrain rule set are.
Well, we know that they're getting ready to be making more of their terrain, and the one thing that I really would like to see is to have more terrain at tables, tournaments feel like it should be climbable. I think that a lot of times, and that's just, in tournaments, obviously you get what you get. Like, sometimes you struggle because you need a lot of terrain.
We're going to get to that with one of the other questions as well. But I guess I have feelings there.
That we'll see that we'll see more. We'll hopefully see a push towards more terrain you can climb on.
Yeah, I think we're going to get away from this. It's going to cause a shuffle in what most people have as their established terrain stock, and it's going to definitely reward multiple levels.
Yeah, for sure.
Next up, that has really good terrain stuff. If you like to 3D print,
yes, it's true
Top
story.
Dog Designs, perfect.
Yes,
love him.
Indeed.
Friend of show.
I don't think that
I can do it too, Jim.
I don't think that our dear friend at Top Dog Designs has any multi-level terrain.
He does not, but he has good terrain you can climb on.
So
for a lot of it.
He does. Some of it can be climbed on. Anyway, Matt Have at the Cole on Discord says, no questions, just wanted to say that it's great to hear you're back. M3E is dead. Long live M4E.
Matt, we gotta get a game in sometime.
Big heart. Boomstick on Discord, oh dear Roman, has no specific questions, but is very excited to hear the episode. Thanks, Roman. I hope this is well worth your time and wait.
I love you, Roman.
Muffin Mage. Yeah, I know, right? Muffin Mage on Discord asks how we think marker-focused crews will change in the new edition. We've already kind of gone over that. I think that I'm positive and quite optimistic about the fact that I don't have to carry 32 different terrain markers in my little tool set anymore.
And I think that we'll hopefully have a skew towards using markers in different ways, being more creative with how we use markers. And I think the same thing goes for condition crews. I hope that we get to see more crews that use the singular condition token in neater ways, as opposed to just stack it to the ceiling.
I agree.
Explodes. Hamlin is going to be really interesting.
Maybe he won't give out blight anymore. Oh, who knows?
We
don't know.
Cheese markers.
Cheese markers.
But
we're going to give cheese tokens out. It's what attracts the rats to the enemies.
It is. I love it.
You take more damage if you have more cheese tokens when you get attacked by a rat. Go ahead, Jim.
The main thing is, if you just take a look at the obliteration cards, a lot of marker focused crews in current 3rd edition have 1 or 2 models that generate those markers, or it's a TN to make a marker. So you're trading actions for markers. In 4th edition, markers are going to be in addition to other things. You're going to do a thing and get a marker at the same time. That's what I think is going to change.
There you go. Spilled Pain Pot on Discord asked us like 800 questions, so we're going to do these super rapid fire. First one, as Malifaux editions change, as Malifaux edition changes go, how would we rank this in terms of excitement or dread / lack thereof from 1E to 2E to 3E to 4E? So I did not play in 1E, so I don't know what that transition looked like. 2E to 3E was a problem, so there was not a lot of excitement because of the way that it got spoiled for us all, unfortunately. So realistically, this is the first actual planned edition change that I've seen, and I gotta say, I feel like Weird is handling this transition change better than just about any other company for any other tabletop game that I have been involved with.
100% no notes.
Yep. I'm good.
Yeah, cool. How would we respond to people's concerns that the game won't feel the same anymore with its reduced complexity? I would say you won't know until you try it. We're in beta. You might end up playing a crew that is kind of boring. Post your feedback and it'll probably get adjusted. But honestly, time will tell. Stinking thinking, don't do it.
Yep. Give it a try. See if it's not reduced, but different complexity.
Right. And realistically speaking, I think we need to understand that there are some players that a new edition just won't appeal to. When anytime an edition changes in a game, there's always players that walk away. I walked away from Fantasy. I walked away from 40K. I've walked away from other games for varying reasons. Most of the time, it was because of decisions made from like a financial perspective. The company that made the edition change, I didn't really care for. Realistically speaking, if there are 1% of players that decide the game is not complex enough for them anymore, but then we get an influx equal to 20% of the existing player base, that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to take. It's not going to be the perfect game for everybody, but give it a try. And I think you'll probably find that you like it. Next up, will the Bayou ever be truly lore relevant? Yes, with Ophelia at the Red Cage. Are we happy that Papa Loco is finally out of his straitjacket? I didn't know that, but I feel happy that he's in a better mental state.
Mental health is important.
Mental health is important. Maybe it's because he saw the love between our favorite gay besties, or our favorite gay couple in the Ortega crew.
Love it.
And it healed him in some way. Anyway. The artwork or vibe of the game seems to have gotten less creepy over the years through the edition changes. Do we agree, and why do we think this is? Yes, I agree. 2E had very dark art. Generally speaking, 3E, kind of the newer releases in 3E were, I think, not less, like drastically less horrible, but there was more of an interesting design aesthetic that kind of injected to it. I will say the artwork that I've seen in some of the teases, I don't really love that much in a lot of cases. And maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy about it. Some of it's cool, but some of it is a little too cartoony for my taste. But not all of it. Like, I love the new Dead Doxy. I love the new Shasta Video Guard. I don't love the new Earl Burns or the new Francois. But again, that's just art. We don't know how the models are actually going to look. So, yeah. Reserving judgment there.
Yeah. I think it's just they've gone in a different aesthetic direction.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's just a matter of how things actually look when all's said and done. Because you look at Bass, he looks pretty darn cool. So who knows? Next one, Vic, this one's for you. Will Molly ever truly find happiness in this edition? I'm going to say yes. She always has a smile on her face, so I think it can happen.
I want to believe.
I want to believe.
Molly X Karai, go.
Yes. Do we think we'll end up in End 4E with 8 masters in each faction, or will Weird get them all back to 9 or more? I have no idea. I expect there are going to be more masters.
There has to be
that's above my pay grade, so I don't know. Yeah. what's our guess for the big bad of 4th edition, i.e. the new Burning Man?
Meridian. We've seen a lot.
I think it's Meridian. There's a lot of stuff pointing towards Meridian, especially with the story from the other side. So I think that it's the return of an actual
Tyrant.
for realsies tyrant. Yeah.
Yeah, a new tyrant war.
Yeah. I agree. And I think Meridian is the most sensible one to be making a big splash.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah. I was about to say that Meridian seems real mean, but that's because I was mixing up Meridian with the term median in my head. And yours was better.
It's late. It's all right. I still don't understand how raises work for damage. Can you explain it to me like I'm 5? Yes. If I have a dual total of a 5 on my defense and you have a dual total of 10, you have beaten me by 5 or more, and you get a raise, meaning +1 damage on the attack, or in some cases other effect based on the ability of the card.
Because
you beat me by 10, you get 2 raises, and I don't know that there's very often situations when you would get 3 raises, but it could theoretically happen with math.
And it's important to remember that you get that with guns and you get that with melee. You do not get that with magic attacks, but magic attacks often have other raise effects.
Right. But essentially a raise is when you beat your opponent's dual total by 5. And then you get 1 raise per 5 that you beat their dual total by. And it can be additional effects. It can be additional damage. You might even have situations where you get bonuses for getting raises defensively. We don't know.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. What would you say to soothe the fears of people that are super nervous about all the changes? Exactly all the stuff that we've been saying. I don't have any other stuff to add there.
Yeah,
just both questions, because he also asks what would temper the optimism. Play. We got an open beta for a reason. Go play.
Tomorrow, and what would temper the optimism? That's a big one. I'd say take everything with a healthy dose of salt and actually play the game. Don't just be unrealistically optimistic and expect that your opinion is the only correct opinion. And most importantly, do not talk down to people who are saying that they're very concerned and just try and convince them that they're wrong. Listen to what they're saying and respond in an appropriate way.
Your best way to affect the game is not to engage in huge levels of conversation with other people about the game. Your best way to affect the game as you play in beta is to put reports in and put accurate and good reports in. When they show you how to do report style, do exactly what they want. That's what they're looking for, and that's what they're going to take the most impact from.
Yeah. And I would say, if you do not have the time or inclination to play beta games, then by all means, look at the cards as they evolve. But if you don't play at least a few games, don't be doom and gloom about it. Just maybe check out until M4 release actually happens. There's nothing wrong with reading and offering hot takes. I do that all the time in beta because I often don't have enough time to play a lot of games. But don't also just read a bunch of stuff that comes out, not participate in the beta, and then complain that things aren't playing out the way that you think they should. So do the work and get the prizes. Do we feel that the change to 4E will help or hurt the competitive scene? Narrative and competitive often don't mix well. I think that at the very top level of the competitive scene, like that 1% of players that are like, androids, very difficult to play against, always going to beat you in 4D chess. I think that it's going to take a lot of readjustment, but I think that the narrative, the benefits of the more narrative focused player are actually going to bring a lot more players in the first place, which is exactly what we need to keep the game healthy.
So I want to step in real quick and say I do not think that there is an inherent dichotomy between narrative and competitive. I think both can exist, and some folks can lean one way or the other, or they can blend both. I think at the top end, any change to the game is going to, depending on what a given competitive scene likes or doesn't like about the game, if that is gone, they may stop playing and want to play something else, and that's their prerogative. I think that the game has enough competitive chops that a competitive scene will develop naturally. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, will Perdita and Hoffman ever get together for a poker night? I think that Hoffman's probably a really, really bad poker player. So it could happen, but I think he'd get so embarrassed that he wouldn't come back because he knows he's a smart dude. And he would be very disappointed with himself.
It's going to cover the entirety of 4E. They're going to keep scheduling it, but then someone has to call it off because of an attack, or they just get the wrong building at the guild compound, and they always keep missing each other.
And then
I'm going to
Sommer's
say
gonna
that
clean
they
them both
try to
out.
get together. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to say that they're trying to get together like a group poker night with like 6 people, but it's like trying to arrange a role playing session with 6 people. It never actually happens. Somebody always has to cancel or reschedule. Shane York from Facebook. We have a Facebook comment. Wants to know which models we are the most excited to see the new versions of and why. I already said Ophelia, so I'm going to change course, and I'm going to say I would really like to see where Mayfeng goes, because that's a master that's been sidelined for a large part of the edition, and I do very much like her alt sculpt for Mayfeng Foreman, but I also really love the 1988 crew, and I would just love to see where Mayfeng and the Foundry Keyword go.
Likewise, I want to see where Ma's going. Ma's losing her bushwhackers and soulstone miners, and those are key to how I like to play her. So I want to know what the plan is.
I am concerned. Speaking of concerns, I'm just going to share this with Ma losing her soulstone miners. I'm a little concerned that she might also lose Sparks, and we know that she's losing Rockhopper based on some other stuff that we've seen. So, am I going to lose Sparks? I can't. I might have to quit the game. Maeve, what about you?
He's becoming an Arcanist master.
Heartbreaking.
Why would you say that?
He's not. I'm kidding.
For
Maeve.
me, I think the model that I'm the most looking forward to is I really want to see a new version of freaking. Now my brain lost it. Totally lost it. Of Marcus, I loved the third edition version. I thought it was really cool. I'm kind of hoping to see a much more like Neverborn evolved Marcus. Like
I thought he was just going to de-age and turn into like a teenager.
Yeah, I just want to see like a fully like native Marcus. You know what I mean? Like,
that'd be cool. Yeah,
really cool.
That'd be cool. I will say that regardless of what happens with Sparks, can we just not do Pact with Explosives anymore and pretend that it doesn't, like, that just doesn't need to be in the game, because it doesn't matter which version of the game it's in, it always causes problems.
It's fucking broken.
Yeah,
probably.
No more Pact with Explosives, please. And then Harold Henning on Facebook likes most of the changes, but will reserve judgment until he plays a few games. Hey, thanks, Harold. That's exactly what we've been saying people should do. His questions are: does it still feel like Malifaux?
Yes.
Maeve, don't say no, Maeve.
Yeah, it still feels Malifaux.
Okay,
really
thanks.
Really
is Malifaux still viable as a competitive game? The crunchiness of M3E drew a lot of former Guild Ball players, including him. Do I think it's going to be as crunchy as Guild Ball? No. Do I think it's as crunchy as Guild Ball now? Not really. But I get where you're coming from. And yes, I do think that it's going to be perfectly viable as a competitive war game. But again, time will tell.
I think there's going to be a lot of crunch when you start integrating scheme through lines and the different ways crews are built.
Yeah, I agree. The beta comprehensive rules need better localization for non-native English speakers. They should avoid double negatives, including non-X to shorten spacing, and character count with using things like non-X, meaning like non-melee attack, whatever, to shorten spacing, and character count in excessive abbreviations. Comprehensive rules should use as much space as is needed to be as clear as possible. Things like speed, abbreviated SP, and size, abbreviated SZ, looking very similar at a glance, may cause issues when learning or demoing. I do agree with that, especially if they're going to a strictly digital format for comprehensive rules. There's a lot less concerns around printing and formatting and stuff like that. So I do think that they do need to have standardization between the core and the comprehensive rules in terms of how things are presented. But I'm sure that they're probably not doing very much localization because we're still in beta. I would fully expect Weird to have well localized versions of the rules moving forward, though. At least I certainly hope they do. Any feedback from you two?
Don't
No,
really
nothing
have
to
a lot
add.
of.
It was a very good point, Harold,
Yeah.
and we appreciate that because it's not something that would have occurred to me. He also has concerns as a TO that putting a lot of emphasis on terrain with more vertical height will clutter up tables and put a lot of burden on TOs to update a lot of tables to be more in line with the new rules. It may stifle creativity in table design. This is probably my biggest concern as a TO. Me, Doug Bowman, and a couple other people run very large events. We had like, I don't know, I can't even remember how many people we had at Captain Con this year, but it was the biggest ever. And Doug Bowman runs the biggest Malifaux event in the U.S. at the Texas Open, Texas GT rather.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I'm going to have to seriously reevaluate what my tables look like, and I'm going to have to probably retire some. I'm going to have to find ways to augment some other ones with more climbable pieces of terrain, or I'm just going to have to, accept the fact that it's tournament and space is a concern, and being able to transport large volumes of terrain for a 40-person tournament without renting a U-Haul to put all my containers in is not realistically going to happen. So I think make the most out of the terrain rules in the narrative and casual games that you play at your LGS. And I'm either and try to help develop or find versions of nesting terrain sets that us TOs can print out. That would be enormously helpful because without those, it's going to be very tough to manage.
Yeah, and I would say that one of the good things we are in this day and age is that we have a lot of STLs out there. So,
Yeah.
if you are someone who likes to print for your tables, start looking at ones that have more climbable spaces on them.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see a change of buildings that have like sloped roofs to like flatter roofs, that sort of thing, or at least have balconies or things like that. Just take a look at it. I mean, I think there's lots of stuff out there. That being said, that's only if you print tables or you want to pay the excessive amount of money to buy printed stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that one of the general concerns that I have is that most of the time, buildings with flat roofs are kind of reserved for sci-fi settings. They just look weird in a fantasy or Victorian setting. Fantasy and Victorian settings look to me like the kind of stuff in the Weirdscapes table, for example. Those pieces of terrain are absolutely gorgeous, and they would not function the way that Weird is intending the terrain rules to function in M4E. So that is probably the thing that I'm the most apprehensive about as a TO and just a player in general. So we'll just have to see if we can find any flat or lightly sloped terrain roofs that are efficient and easy to transport and durable.
Or that at least
those are
has
kind of
sections of the roofs.
the big
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
So to that end, I would like to point folks in the direction of Carnival, a minis game that has a lot of terrain that has those flat roof structures, and there's a couple of third-party terrain makers of MDF terrain that you could get, but it is going to require restocking your terrain, your boards.
Yeah.
But I think what you have done, Jesse, is actually really cool when it comes to Captain Con. By doing your cartographer award, you're encouraging people to bring their own boards. And I think if you are a TO, this is a really good idea that not only gives your players an extra chance to be creative themselves, but can take some of the pressure off of a TO at building high level tables.
Yeah, definitely.
It's good. It's amazing, and everybody loves it. Every time
Actually,
yeah.
that reminds me, I need to message Sebastian again because he won the Cartographer's Award. It took me a long time to send him examples of what I could print, and then he said he'd think about it and get back to me. And then neither of us got back to each other. So, Sebastian, thanks for winning the Cartographer's Award. I still would like to print you some terrain. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
And then last piece of input from Harold is there's a lot of good, some bad that can be ironed out in open beta, and some bad that he fears won't be changed. So I guess time will tell there, but I think that especially the stuff that you're concerned about and won't be changed is the most important stuff to give feedback on when you're actually able to post in the open beta forum. So definitely. That's it. We got through all the questions. Just quick little final thought segment. I mean, for me, it kind of echoes the stuff that we've just been saying. The sky's not falling. Yes, your concerns are legitimate. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, but just give the game some grace, give the designers some grace, play at least a couple of beta games, and then decide if you're going to continue to participate in the beta or just sign out and wait until the new edition comes to see where we actually land.
And it's perfectly okay if you want to do that. It is perfectly okay if you want to take a little break and step back and be like, I'm just going to chill until it gets there. There's no shame in that. Not everybody has the headspace or the time to do beta games. You're not
and
a
I would
bad
say
player if you do that.
If you do play beta games, we have seen some instances in the past with some people having a pet keyword or a pet couple of keywords and then just pushing to try and get those keywords buffed as much as possible. Or maybe they have keywords that they really hate playing against, or even factions they really hate playing against. And it seems like they might go out of their way to try and shine a light on those things and get them nerfed. Don't do that. Just keep an open mind. Play in the beta if you can, but think of the things that you do contributing to the overall health of the game, and don't just kind of work on your own pet projects. So
yeah, this is a time of change. Change is uncertainty. It can be scary, but it can be exciting. And whatever it is, remember, it is a game. That's it. So have fun.
Yes, it is a time of change and uncertainty indeed, but at least there's no tariffs in Malifaux. At least that we have to worry
So
about.
far.
Why'd you go
So
there?
far. Why'd I go there? I couldn't help it. It's time.
I mean,
Lucius would probably be at fault for that, and he's kind of a dirtbag anyway. So
That's true.
yeah. All right, Nathan. Sorry, Lucius has levied tariffs in Malifaux against Earthside, so you're gonna have to figure that one out with him. Yeah. Any other final thoughts from either of you, or can we bid these fine viewer or listeners adieu?
It's good to be back, and this has finally pulled me between having new players in my area and being excited for a new edition. This has pulled me back in the game, so that means all of y'all have to deal with me some more. So good luck with that.
Come tomorrow, assuming we get our open beta. If anybody would like to get a beta game on Vassal or even in person, if you live nearby, hit me up.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for a game.
We have a Discord. Put them in the Discord that you're looking for people. I'm sure
It's true.
We might even make a looking for beta games.
Yes, we're going to do our best to work along with all of the other Discord servers and content creators, and we're all going to have separate looking for beta games channels, and they're not going to cross-pollinate with each other, and we won't. It's a whole thing. And my cat just came down and started meowing at me like crazy.
So I guess
that's our sign to sign off.
Have a good night.
Thanks very much, everybody. We appreciate you listening. And as always, keep your conversations boring and stay weird, folks. I got a cat.
You have a cat.
That is a quality looking cat.